We're going into a conversation about physical space. And this is the first time on the responsive conference stage we've had an architect, and not just any, but an award-winning, world-famous architect talking about the future of work. Matthias is the author of New Aging, Living Smarter Now to Live Better Forever, which was published in 2016. His work has been published in Wallpaper, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Dwell, and Architecture Digest. As you're going to see from his presentation, he's done a lot of world-class work around the world. And let's give him a standing ovation. Matthias.
Hello, hello. How are you guys doing?
Great.
You guys had some good food? Yes. First for the soul and now for the stomach, I hope, right? So what's so fascinating these days that so many things in the world are changing. Now I have a question. Who actually answered a couple of emails for work over the last weekend? Hands up. Now, who from time to time works from home? Hands up. Oh, wow, same. That's like 80% in this room. Now, a tougher question. Who has done some private stuff, like checking emails that were not work-related, Facebook, and all of these kind of things at work? Be honest, come on, it's a little bit more than this. This is not 70%, it's 100%, right? So this is actually super fascinating that we're seeing right now, that there are a lot of different activities are happening in very different places where they shouldn't happen, but they do happen. And now actually you finally helped me to answer a big question that I'm being asked about all the time. What kind of projects do we specialize in? Because everyone expects me as an architect to do office buildings or cultural buildings or residential buildings. And what I now can answer them finally, thanks to you, is that we do everything because it doesn't matter anymore. Because we go to work, we do private things, we go home, we still work, we go into a museum, we go shopping in the museum store, and we go into a retail space, into a mall, and there's a gallery. Right? So these things are blurring. And when we think about the future of life and the future of work and the future of living, we actually have to consider these kind of changes in all of our behaviors. Now, what is so interesting about it now is that there are incredible forces that are making these changes happening. And these are the millennials, right? It's the largest generation right now, and they're pushing the envelope on every level about redefining the way how we work, live, and play. And there are many different analyses around it. And one of the things is, for example, the shared economy. It's also about communal experiences. And there are also financial aspects that are all touching that kind of big topic. Now, what happens now in architecture is that we are still designing all of these apartment buildings that are totally cookie cutter, that most of you guys know about. And the problem is that these ones are not adequate anymore for the lifestyles that the millennials want. And also other generations are inspired now to actually look into a different and experience something different. But for example, sharing, which is really one of the big new topics, and there come two different avenues coming into it. The one is a necessity because of financial constraints. The other one is just a lifestyle choice that people want to share. So one of the solutions that now we as architects are looking into are micro apartments, making them as small as possible, down to like 300 square feet or less. And then what we can do to compensate for that kind of smallness and tightness is create a new kind of housing principles where we aggregate them all together, but we compensate for the density by amenities that we bring into the community. This is a proposal that we developed for the Bloomberg administration. We call it MAX, where we put all the amenities into the rooftop so that not the penthouses deserve the best place, it's actually the community at large to come together and enjoy that kind of communal experience. The apartments now as small, as tight as possible, with flexibility in terms of different layouts, so that we allow people to be able to live in the apartments, work in the apartments, and sleep in the apartments. But most important is really that new experience about getting together into the communal spaces, and we put everything into the crown of the building, because this is what the community deserves, where we now have communal dining, we have workout activities and leisure activities. And that is where we see the principles now going for a whole way of new living, so where it's not just about your private home anymore, it is about these additional activities. And with this kind of concept, we got this incredible opportunity to develop something for WeWork. You guys know all about the incredible WeWork environments now that have really revolutionized the way we work, not just in their buildings. Every other company is inspired by it. And WeLive is the next generation for living. And what we developed with WeWork over a couple of years is actually a whole new apartment typology. On the left one, you see the old one in New York, a one-bedroom, 700 square feet. And now we're densifying it, and we're allowing 4 people to share an apartment with 700 square feet to live together in a communal setting. What we also have done is we created a principle that all of these elements are prefabricated, so we can bring them into this environment very flexible. And now you see this is what we built here in Wall Street, where you come in and you have these different sleeping rooms next to each other, going into the lounge space towards the facade, where you now have the kitchen and the TV area and all the communal areas up to the front. Now, what's so interesting here is that we realized when you make bedrooms smaller, 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 at some point they're just sad little bedrooms. If you design them like a boat, they become cool. And this is what's happening, right? So these are really kind of sleeping coys, like in a boat. And we're seeing already that people are extremely excited about to be there, because this is now a place where you have your privacy within your small bedroom, but you have also the community and the collective around it. But when you bring so many people into one of the apartments, you have to look into details. For example, even here the closets, to be able to pull them out so that everyone has their own little closets, so that when one has more clothing, wet clothing, you never have these conflicts that they're rubbing onto each other. Or in the bathrooms, for example, we have this handrail, which is also a light fixture, and we have these little cubbies, and if you don't want to share it, you take your shampoo with you, and with that you maintain your own kind of private elements. And all of that now we can package into all different kind of buildings, and these buildings can become these amazing communities that really inspire a new way of living. And what we have seen now with WeWork and WeLive is that people move actually into these places first into a studio apartment to be on their own, but as soon they become active in the community, they start sharing and they move into these communal living rooms, in these communal apartments. And here in our proposals, we have to make sure that this density is compensated with amenities within. And our pitch is that there are actually 3 types of amenities. The first one is about education, where there is an ongoing place where people can grow with their knowledge. The second one is post-retirement activities, where the community helps each other through volunteering. And the last one is spiritual support and also healthcare that we all need. And we see these kind of buildings as communal livings of all generations, because that is also something we're very passionate about it, because we have to make sure that we bring older and younger people together to learn from each other, because that is the most amazing source of knowledge that we can have, and buildings can support that through the DNA in the building, and of course also through the way how we design the apartments within. Now, talking about work, it's the same kind of revolution that's happening here right now. And I mentioned already WeWork, who's really changed the game. But we're seeing it now with all of our buildings and all of our clients, that we finally at the point that we cannot build these kind of boring experiences anymore because nobody wants to be there. We have to create variations of workspaces. So as we just heard about our posture and our mobility, right? So that we find the best place where we can do our work that is best also for our health. But then these buildings have to become amenitized, because sometimes the best work is not behind the computer, behind the desk. It happens in the couch, in the lounge, in the cafe, on the roof, in the gym, somewhere else, right? So all of these buildings become highly amenitized. And then none of us want to be in these buildings anymore, which are just containers in their own rights. We want to be engaged with our building community so that there's a positive relationship, so that these buildings actually become urban campuses and they open up towards its context. So one of the projects that we had the opportunity to design is the Innovation Center for the University of Pennsylvania. The name didn't come from us, but somebody liked it. And as an architect and former professor at Penn, I was slightly disappointed when they offered me this old shabby building to reinvent. But the program was interesting because they said they want to have labs for entrepreneurs. But I had to convince them that it's not just about lab space that create creativity and entrepreneurship. You have to create conversations between people, because when you create a product or a company, you always have to present, you have to find collaborators, you have to find financial partners and all of that. So now what we suggested to the university is to take that old shabby building and add some additional programs to it: a pitch bleacher, an entrepreneur bar, a boardroom, and a visitor center. And we can shape it into a recognizable form, because that could become the amazing advertisement for the building at large. And this is what we built. So you see that we have a building with 95% old substance and then 5% new, but this is a new program that makes all the difference for the building and the community in the building. This is a social activation. This is where the people come together, but it is also the face of the building and the face of innovation for the university. So when I gave my pitch to the president, Amy Glockman, at Penn, I said, and by the way, we learned from a lot of our other work where we do pop-ups for brands that there's also a lot of PR value in a spectacular form. And we can prove you that you can basically get $3 million free advertisement. And of course, she was laughing and saying, like, by the way, Matthias, you know that we are a non-for-profit university, but gave me a big wink like this. Was I got you. So for the rest of the building, we actually kept it very informal. You see already that we kept the facade partially not even renovated, in terms of the brick not cleaned, but we added LEED Gold certification kind of types of windows. The egg crates are actually shading devices, cut open into the building to open towards the public plaza. In the inside, we kept it incredible informal. We had not much budget, so we had to be very conscious about it. But even more important so is that you don't want to over-design buildings anymore. You want to actually create buildings that allow people who are in it to unfold their own kind of character and their own personality. So we used just the bones of the old building. We used technology as infrastructure, so the big ducts. For example, our engineer came back to me with a little duct like this. I was like, no, I need the biggest one because that's much cooler. So you see the big duct here. Then going also with the lights, and on the left and the right we have now all the different lab spaces. And then this is the portion which pushes out into the facade, which is our pitch bleacher. And I was a little bit afraid that this could become just a gimmick, right? So we as architects, we just like to create form, but it turned out to be the most active space in the building. People are hanging out there all the time and present to each other. And 3 months ago, one company in this building raised $2.5 million from a VC on that bleacher, and now it's legendary. Everyone want to be here and make the big pitches now. Now, the other elements here, we have big robotics in it, with lab spaces, maker spaces, and so on, all of that coming together. But the more interesting space is actually on the ground floor. It's always very difficult to do office spaces because it feels kind of weird when you're next to the sidewalk. But we couldn't do retail in this location. So we proposed to create entrepreneur garages where you have this big garage door on the outside, and it ties it beautifully into the legend of the Silicon Valley of HP Garage and Apple Garage. And these spaces were leased immediately. So the university would actually love to build many more entrepreneur garages because that's actually the moneymaker now of the building. But you see that the building now, it's still a little bit lonely, but it's so successful in terms of its activation and its purpose so that now there's new development sites which are now already deemed for future expansion for the university. Which is also interesting for us as architects, that we can finally prove real estate agents wrong, because they always say it's about location, 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 but it's now about purpose. If you create purpose, you can create a location for a building and a site. And quite similar in its kind of purpose, but a little bit different in scale. It's actually 25 Kent. People in New York maybe know about this project. This is done with the first female heavy hitter in real estate, Toby Moskowitz. She is a tech investor originally. She came to New York and she decided to change the game in real estate. Nobody believed she can pull this off, but she did. It's a whole city block in Brooklyn. She came to us after she had talked to 5 different architects who she fired if we can help her on the site. And there's a very complicated process in New York. It's called ULIP. You go to the city and you ask for more density to build a bigger building, which is better because you make more money and you bring in more people. She started a process. And we got the ULIP process done because we explained that we're going to use these warehouses from the neighborhood as a scale reference. We stack them on top of each other. Then we cut it open to express modernity. We punch a hole through the whole building to turn the office building into a campus. And that's what we're building. So where you see that it fluidly fits perfectly into Brooklyn, into Williamsburg, with all the heritage of the post-industrial neighborhood. We have the social core cutting through the building, connecting it with the neighbors to engage with them and not become this isolated space. We have this kind of avenue through here where we have retail with restaurant, light manufacturing on the ground floor, with the cafes, also with rising ceilings, because Toby Moskowitz doesn't believe in efficiency. It's about experiences. Go as high as you can, if you can. It's really beautiful to work with her. And then you have this amazing view through what's Manhattan, and this is where we are. So when you come to New York in 4 months, send me an email. I would love to show you the space because it's really a revolution now in office design because a building with a personality, with a character that puts the people first, but also has a strong identity, but it also feels very contextual because we believe in our praxis that we actually want to create buildings that make neighborhoods better and not worse, because that is really the power of that we have and also the responsibility. And in a similar kind of world right now, since you have probably experienced that I'm from Germany originally, there's now a couple of projects we're doing in the city where I'm from, in Munich. And this was a competition where we were asked to design 4 buildings in a little bit outside from the city center. And our argument was that we cannot just design the buildings. We have to create a relationship between the buildings because the magic is in the public space in between. Because this finally is where we can bring the people together. When you go to work, you have your coffee. After work, you have your drink. You meet your colleagues. You meet other people. You meet the neighbors. So anything what we can do to actually make these public spaces better, it's a free amenity for our client, which in the end you don't have to build extra money in it because you have to build these facades anyway. But to put actually additional attention in it, so you see that we have this kind of terracing spaces, we have this big kind of very dense kind of canyons through the building. All of these kind of things suddenly become the third space, the activated amenity space that helps to really create a community, a new space where the public space is really the identity and not the building. And now all of this is approved. We're going now into construction, where it's also the beauty that you cannot really grapple what kind of form it is, but it's immediately branded into your mind so that we're using also, again, architecture as a communication element and an amenity for the public activation in here. And thankfully, our client was so excited about our first 4 buildings we designed at the front. They asked us to also design the building in the back so that you see that this becomes a whole now neighborhood that has this kind of informality and really put the public and the people first so that we have these social activations all over here. And now we're in construction. And the last part is that we should not forget that there's also play. And the play is very important because after a hard day of work, we do have to let loose a little bit. But there are also a lot of new rules now how play has to happen for the new generation. And we had the opportunity to do an experiment with the Museum of Modern Art PS1, where we created the Young Architects Program, summer program here in New York. And our intention was to actually create a sculpture that cleans the air to make the world a better place. And we found actually titania nanoparticles. When it coat a surface, it's being hit by the sun, it eliminates pollution. We were able to eliminate actually the pollutions of 240 cars. And this is how it looks, just sitting here as a little spiky star in the courtyard of MoMA PS1. And you see already what it did here from the kind of formal introduction of this mega sculpture. It was actually not about the sculpture. It actually turned out to be something incredible just for people to come together. And to find these opportunities where we can create special places where people come together and empower people to meet other people and to have this environment, it's something absolutely magical that can infuse all of the different typologies that we have. And this is a short impression of what it all turned out to be. Really taught us that in the end, it's all about work, live, and play. The whole combination of all of that to be reinvented, to create really a difference in people's lives. And when we want to innovate our work environments, we cannot forget all the other things that we have to change. Thank you.